Next item on our agenda is the public comment period. That is a 45-minute time limit. This is for the public to give any input on items that are on the agenda, but not on the subject of public hearing. One of the things that we need to discuss just before we get this started is that we've had situations to where people have been called names. We have had situations where groups have been called names, and we would like to eliminate that. We need to be respectful in every way that we can, and we need to help each other through this. This is a tough time for all of us. So I would just appreciate any public comment to be directed towards the agenda and not towards individual people or groups, and leave the name calling out if I could, please. Mrs. Mounts, anything on the...
Yes, Mr. Dennis Willingham.
Dennis Willingham, 792 Old Belmont Road, Front Royal. And I just want to comment on the Stanley's contract coming up. I feel we need to obliterate this because he has done anything that cost us money from day one. Just like the bogus charges they had when you had him out here, all this stuff about the EDA, he was laughing coming out of the jail knowing that the bogus and so it cost us money. So he's not feelings right now, he has not done us any good whatsoever. Anything he's done, he's cost us all money all the way along. So I feel that he's not qualified to do this job. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Melanie Salins.
Melanie Salins, 95 Murray's Drive. I wanted to start by thanking all the new board members. You've brought a fresh perspective, and I really like what I've been hearing. I think the county is really turning a corner, which is very important because the faith of the citizens is being restored, that we're going to come through what has happened to us. Unfortunately, I believe that the damage has already been done with the citizens' faith in Mr. Stanley. And I would ask that you not renew his contract. The bottom line is we've experienced a major scandal, and he was the boss when it happened. So if we want to close this chapter and move forward, we have to start with a clean slate. I would also ask that moving forward, with whomever holds the seat as County Administrator going forward, I would encourage you to rewrite the contract. I have several concerns with the contract as a document as it stands currently, and I would just encourage you to restructure it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Kushner.
Gary Kushner, 1106 Fetchett Road, Browntown. Good evening, all. The previous board and this board now has undoubtedly received public feedback that many are not pleased with the performance and sometimes the attitude of our county administrator. I believe at times he seemed detached and arrogant. He is sometimes not given an appropriate level of attention to public concerns while consistently guarding the establishment. I am one of those voices representing dissatisfaction. I believe the administrator is part of the business as usual establishment, where government has continually grown, especially over the past 6 years, when real estate taxes were increased annually, including a rate increase of 10% in the current budget year. I doubt there are many citizens whose income has increased at the pace our government has grown. I believe he's out of touch with the public and might be part of the old boys network that is not representative of the leadership that citizens want and deserve. Considering the breadth of issues and initiatives that the administrator has been associated with on a daily basis, I can't help but wonder why he wasn't able to notice some of the odd happenings at the EDA and raise questions and possibly limit some of the effects we've ultimately witnessed. I think many department heads under the administrator may have become complacent in trying to improve and expand their services by relying on more revenue from the citizens rather than finding ways to increase productivity and do more with existing resources. They've not been adequately managed to focus on addressing their core missions using existing resources rather than expecting that there will always be more money available. Having new leadership would be a wake-up call to all in our government that the public is not an endless money tree, and their effectiveness will be measured with how much productivity they can create with limited resources. I am also seriously alarmed at the level of support the administrator exhibited for the recent Crooked Run West project, when the facts ultimately showed such a proposal would have been a disaster for the county citizens in terms of its budget impact, reduced public safety, and an overall degradation in our quality of life. I have to acknowledge, though, that the administrator's efforts have sometimes been valuable, and he has amassed a substantial amount of historical knowledge in his almost 2 decades of service. But even so, that does not make up for shortcomings that exist. Plus, no one person is indispensable, and losing some institutional knowledge does not have to be a barrier to achieving progress on any issue or the challenges we may face in the future. A majority of this board was elected with a citizen mandate to change government's direct trajectory back to a conservative, core mission focus versus the expansion that has occurred. The best way forward to achieving that is by obtaining new leadership who will come in with eyes wide open, without preconceived ideas, biases, or special interest alignments. Thus, I ask that you vote no on a motion to extend the contract with the existing administrator. Thank you.
Any
Mr.
additional
Chairman,
people?
There's no one else signed up for the agenda.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on the agenda? Yes, sir, Mr. Ronaldo.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. Emily, I signed up on the wrong sheet, so when you see, sorry about that. There were some good speakers here tonight that brought up some good points. And for once, I'm going to be in the minority here. I'm going to speak in favor of Mr. Stanley. And the reason for that is, I've worked with him for the last 20 years. When he was the zoning administrator, he got rid of a junkyard that was in Shenandoah Farms. I mean, it just wasn't trash. It was used cars taken apart for parts, etc. Oil being spilt on the ground. And Mr. Stanley took it. It's serious, our complaints about that area. And he got it taken care of. It took a while, but he didn't give up. So he's very persistent. I've had dealings with him as chairman of the property owners of Shenandoah Farms. Next to Front Royal, Shenandoah Farms is the most populous area in Warren County. So there's been a lot of back and forth with him on that. I will say he's a tough negotiator because I never did win any of those discussions. He was looking out for the county, I believe. Now, some of the speakers spoke of things that, the Crooked Run project, things like that. Those things come up, and it's kind of a tough situation to maybe blame one person for it. And the speakers made their points very well. And Mr. Mabe, I appreciate your comments prior to the meeting of this section of the agenda, so that hopefully nobody will call me some names. So thank you very much for that. And like I say, I didn't write anything down, I didn't prepare anything, but I can tell you that in my dealings with Stanley, he's always been professional, he's been fair, and I believe, and there's people that disagree with me, of course, but I believe he had the county's interest at heart. And with that, I would ask you to consider some options with this contract. Maybe extend it for 1 year. I know what it's like to be a new member of a board, and you're playing a lot of, I know I am on the school board, we're playing a lot of catch up, but they're doing their best to indoctrinate me to bring me up to speed. And with Mr. Stanley's ability to coach people, you may want to consider one option of maybe extending his contract for a year with that option so that he can continue to coach you guys up. I know he's been doing that. So with that in mind, I would ask that you think about this and give it some thought. It's a tough decision. I wouldn't want to have to make it. So, but that's why you're sitting up there. So anyway, thanks for the time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for speaking, Mr. Long. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Mr. Baggerly?
Harold Bagley, 327 Liberty Hall Road, Front Royal, Virginia, 22630. I'm totally opposite of this gentleman that just spoke before me, and I'm all for the ones that spoke before him. Every blind hoe can find an acorn once in a while, but that hoe has cost this county a lot of money and deception and a poor administrator. It seems like to me it's for him and a few and for the taxpayers of Warren County to foot the bill. And that's why y'all were elected a new board to change this thing. And I asked you tonight to stand up and change it. All of you. You know what's right. Let's do the right thing. Thank you.
Appreciate you speaking, Mr. Baggerly. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Nice hat.
Happy St. Patty's Day. I live in McDonough. I live at 1205 High Top Road, Linden, Virginia. And I've been involved with Mr. Stanley for years when we were trying to get the Shenandoah Farms situation taken care of. And there were some rough issues and we had problems and stuff like that, but I just don't agree that he would be the person that I want the new board members to be coached by. Yes, he has a lot of information, he's been here 20 years, but it doesn't mean that somebody else can't come in and do the same thing. I believe that people shouldn't have a position like he's had for 20 years. Maybe in the beginning you start out all bright and sunshine-eyed and everything, and then eventually you might be looking a different way, or they keep putting so much more on their plate, and things get mixed up and stuff, and I just don't agree. I am not for Mr. Stanley and having his contract renewed at all. Thank you very much.
Thanks for speaking. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on the agenda? Anyone that would like to speak on the agenda? If not, last call. The agenda for the public comment period is now closed.
I move that the board certifies to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under section 2.2-3711A1 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting of a public body.
I second it.
Any concerns?
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Cullers?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
I move that the written employment agreement of June 30th, 2015 between Warren County and Mr. Stanley not be renewed and be allowed to expire by its own terms on June 30th, 2020, and that upon such expiration, Mr. Stanley continue to be employed at will without a written contract as County Administrator at his current salary, and that for so long as Mr. Stanley continues to be employed, his deferred compensation shall continue at its current rate, that he be allowed to use his county vehicle, and that he be allowed to teach as he currently does.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Ms. Cullers?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye, but I'd like to see his contract renewed.
Is there any additional discussion?
Nope.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Hallelujah.
I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?